Good morning, everybody. Just to check, are we audible? Can everyone online hear us? Yes. Okay, cool. So welcome to our listeners. Thank you again for joining. I know it's a Saturday morning, it's cold, we've all been working the whole week. So we do appreciate the time that you took out today to join us. My name is Ashton Porter, so I'm part of the research team based in Cape Town. Um, Yeah, and today I'd welcome these beautiful young ladies over here. So they are part of a working group that we've been working with over the past year, so since last year, July. And they call themselves the Voices of the Plain. So they are just some of the representatives from the group that we've been working with. And just for some context, so with the LSE, we've been working on a project around urban violence and security and how that impacts young people in two cities, both in Cape Town, specifically Mitchell's Plain, and in Colombia as well. But then I'll hand over to Alex to explain a bit more. But before that, one of the main ethos of this research journey was to really acknowledge that young people are the experts of their own lives. So it wasn't just about participating with young people, but it was about co-creating a space where they have a platform to share their experiences and develop initiatives that is youth-led in the community. So we are also joined and we also welcome Alex and Gareth, who are part of the LSE research team, and they can just expand a bit more on the framework of the context in which we have been working on. So yes, I mean you guys can introduce yourselves.
All right. Yes, my name's Gareth Jones. I'm a professor at London School of Economics in London, in the UK. I'm one of the London researchers. Just very briefly, kind of what got us to this point, at least from the sort of London perspective, was an acknowledgement, I suppose, a motivation that young people are sort of disproportionately affected by violence and often talked about by others in the context of violence and insecurity in a whole series of different ways, locally and nationally and internationally. But then when you look at the sort of the content and the debates, the sort of the forum within which sort of policy and sort of media constructions about young people and their relationships to violence and insecurity, young people's voices are largely absent. It tends to be people of my generation or thereabouts who are doing the shouting about how policy should be formulated, how society must change, and often in particular how young people must change and adapt. So what motivated the project, at least from a distance initially, was trying to bring these two issues together. How do young people experience insecurity and violence at a local level? And how can we kind of bring some of that much broader understanding of those experiences into policy and media discussions? So it's young people's voices, like Voices of the Plain, rather than our voices in that sort of forum.
Thank you. So, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Alexandra Abello Colak. I'm also a researcher at the London School of Economics. I'm originally from Colombia. We were really excited to have the opportunity to do this initiative in two cities. So here in Cape Town and also in Medellin, which is the second biggest city in Colombia. Two cities that have been affected by violence, insecurity, but that historically have had communities resistant and enduring these issues. And trying to survive, but also trying to find solutions. So we were really excited to explore, as I had said, what can be done about this? What are the policies and strategies that can be done to reduce violence and security, but recognizing that young people are the most affected by these problems, but that we don't really understand how young people are understanding what security is and what are the expectations, what are the dreams, and what are the things that they are also expecting in terms of solutions. And what we found, and I'm so glad that we're going to probably hear more about this in the course of this conversation, is that young people have many ideas that can inform and help us think how to better respond to these complex problems that we are seeing in both cities. And but yeah, we have been learning a lot about another way of understanding what security is. We understand that it's not just about crime and the type of things that we see in the news or what politicians talk about, but it's much more complex. But that also there are many other ways and we can respond to these problems. So yeah, first, thank you so much for joining us in this conversation, and I'm looking forward to exchanging ideas about these topics.
So before I give the voices of playing a chance to introduce themselves, I just want to emphasize on what Alex and Gareth was saying. Even now during the month of it's Youth Month, it's Child Protection Week, and everything that has been happening over the last couple of months, and we just playing with the rise in crime in the communities, it's so important for us to involve our young people. And I urge you guys that are listening to really active listen and reflect and engage with what the young people are going to talk about through this conversation, because we can only do what is in our control. And if we give young people the platform, they have agency. We just need to give them a platform to showcase that agency. So yeah. So now I'm going to hand over to Voices of the Plane. They can just introduce themselves. And yeah.
Morning, everyone. So my name is Ayan. I am a university student majoring in psychology and social development.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Sofra Kerno, and I'm a volunteer from Cape Flats Farmshade.
Morning, everyone. I'm Yazreen. I'm from a university studying psychology and information.
Thank you very much. And just for more context, so like I said, since last year, July, we've been working with a group of young people on different initiatives that they will talk more about later on in the conversation. But we welcome you and we thank you for, showing up and for having the confidence to speak about experiences that you've had in the community. So all of these young people do stay in different parts of Mitchell's Plain. And so they would have different experiences around, what safety and security feels like for them. So what does that mean to you? What does safety and security mean to you as a young person who's either grown up or lived for a long time in Mitchell's Plain?
So for me, I recently moved to Mitchell's Plain, I think in my second year of university. So I would say I was living here for almost 3 years. So what safety means to me is that I've been safe within my own community and I've been able to reach out towards my family members or the neighborhood and that. But since I was raised in the northern suburbs and I was moved to southern suburbs, safety wasn't really an issue for me growing up in the northern. But since I've been here for almost 3 years, I feel unsafe. Even just driving up to Westgate. So, just looking at that transition, I didn't realize that, waking up in the morning and extremely early to go to university or to work, that we actually have to worry about our own safety. And I still remember there were talks in the evenings with my grandmother and my family members around being careful when leaving a certain time, making sure your doors are locked at night because you never know who's walking down the street. So it's actually quite sad that a lot of the times that people actually have to sit and worry about the safety, even if it's within their own home. And security for me, everyone's thinking about what's the security in your neighborhood. But to me, security means being able to see whether I do have a future, where I see myself 5 years from now, and being able to afford or be granted certain opportunities outside of my community.
Well, from my perspective, what safety means to me, I don't just think it's a sense of physical security, but as well as emotional. Being able to reach out to people, like you mentioned, in your community, your neighbors, etc., etc. That also, it's important that you are able to have security. But yeah, and knowing that you are surrounded by the right people, or that you have the right people in your life, and the values that keeps you grounded as well. So yeah.
And then just to add on, to what you guys were saying. I think safety to me means also being comfortable in the community, in our community, walking, just to a bus stop or even walking to the tuck shop, just being able to feel safe, feeling comfortable walking alone to the tuck shop, to the shop, to the mall, anything. I feel like that's something very important because you don't feel alone, like you don't feel safe in walking by yourself, especially as a female as well. Walking by yourself to the shop or anything like that. So I think for safety, I think that's what it means to me. And then security, to add on to what Sayan was saying, opportunities. I definitely think that if we were able to have more opportunities from the government, even within our communities, just to have that, I think that would be.
Yes, I just wanted to add that all those experiences that you're sharing really resonate with the things that were shared with us by the young people in Medellin. So we see this really interesting kind of dialogue between your experiences and one of the things that we have kind of really come to realize is how important is to us different people what security means in order to recognize that everybody experiences insecurity and security differently depending on their age, depending on their gender, depending where they live, depending on the stage in life they are. And that is very important because normally when we hear people or politicians or even experts in security talking about security, they speak about security as if we are all in the same situation or we expect the same things. And obviously you talk about the future, you talk about how you feel in terms of having networks of support, your families, your friends, and those protection mechanisms is something very important for young people, for example. So when we think about what we can do to improve security, for example, we need to think about what are those networks of support that young people are having access or not in our communities, right? So it's not just about crime, it's not just about being the police. You need a lot, many other things in order to be able to guarantee that type of security that talks about emotional and health safety, or being able to feel that you have opportunities for the future. So this is an invitation, and thank you so much for sharing that because it really forces us to widen the conversation about security and recognize that it's much more than that we are currently talking about.
Exactly that. Thank you so much, everyone. And exactly that you spoke about family structures, how important grandmothers are. You spoke about mental health. You spoke about your roots. And so you can see it's violence is not just something physical. It's not just one incident, but it's all of these things combined. And so when someone or a young person is facing multiple, sort of pressures from different spheres, economic or opportunities, lack of opportunities. We really need to think about what that does for young people and where are the spaces where they can share these challenges. And so, but through this project, we've also done a lot of activities outside the workshops. So we started off with participation workshops where we sort of mapped out, what are the challenges young people are facing, and took it from there. What do they think are the solutions? And so there has been some initiatives that was led by the Voices of the Plain. So maybe you guys can expand, what has happened and what does it mean for you as a person. So what has this done? Yeah.
So before joining this program and this community organization, I still remember last year towards the end of my university semester, Ashton actually approached me because she also noticed that I also live in Mitchell's Plain, and it gave me an opportunity to just to explain or to express my experience living in the community. And I can still distinctively remember how I was telling her that since I am studying social development and everything is community based, and how can we as the youth be more involved? I remember reading this case study where this one community actually introduced a podcast program for the youth, and doing the roundtable discussions with my peers and that, we realized that it actually made an impactful expression for the youth, and it became an ongoing program within the school. And I still remember telling Naz about it, and I'm how can we realistically see that? Because everything is all written on paper, research is done on paper, but how can we see this actually being more involved in the community? And then I was telling Ashton about this, and she's like, I actually really like this podcast idea. And let me just pitch it out to the organization, see whether they like it or not. And I think like maybe 2 weeks ago, we actually filmed our first podcast episode. And to me, that's really impressive because I didn't actually realize that you can actually be more involved and that people do actually listen to the youth instead of just coming towards them, like asking for the experiences just to write a simple research paper and just move on. Like there are actual people that do want to be more involved and actually do want to make a difference in people's lives.
Thank you, Vivek. So basically what I've experienced going from this project, I can definitely say that I've been exposed to a new atmosphere or environment. Especially with the podcast, I feel like that is our highlight of the whole project. But yes, it was definitely a good experience. Like I said, I was exposed and now I have a better understanding of what the podcast, the impact that it has, especially through social media, the impact that social media has on our young people as well. So I think the initiative it's great and it's doing amazing. We have been filming, etc., etc. So yeah, this project has definitely opened doors, as well as a sense of hope for our young people. I can definitely do that. Yeah.
I agree with you. I also think that, just having our podcast, giving voice, having our voices heard as a community, especially that come from different parts of Mitchell Spain, and also talking for other individuals that, our family that we heard from, and other people in our community as well, just giving them voice through us, basically. I think, that's definitely been a good thing out of this project. And then also one thing that I loved from this project was that we got to engage with the community, but we were able to step out and actually listen to them, helping them, and engaging with the community. So I think that's something that's still up for me.
And so before the podcast and all of the lovely initiatives that we started, we also developed a survey that actually they co-produced with us. So what was that like, developing the questions and seeing the outcomes and actually seeing the results that came out from that survey?
For me, because I still remember I was always giving feedback back and forth when actually structuring and writing the survey. I actually found that it was really fun as well as engaging because Ashton was still asking me do you understand what we are asking? Instead of just generating a standard survey to send out to the youth, we were able to engage and structure the survey in such a way that the youth can actually understand what you're asking. Because sometimes questions can be complex. And we, as the youth, wouldn't be able to understand what exactly we're asking. And just going through the whole process, for me, I felt seen, and I think the youth as well. Instead of you're actually asking for their opinion, instead of we're just writing a survey, and we need you to complete this and that. But you made it in such a way for everyone to be involved and to be seen.
Regarding the survey, it was a process, but not in a bad way. We sat here in this office, discussing the questions, etc. Well, from our perspective, coming from the Mitchell's Plain area, with the survey work, according to us, we are representatives from Mitchell's. But yes, I can definitely agree that it wasn't just a regular survey. We were asking not in-depth questions, but the proper questions basically. But yes, I can definitely say it was more than just a survey. We were able to engage with young people. And yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, what I read in the surveys, the survey questions and everything, and I definitely think, wow, like that sounds great. It's definitely, it's inclusive and it's definitely something that touches on everything. So yeah, but
Yeah, I mean, that's really good to hear, obviously. Feel validated. But, I mean, it's also what we were trying to sort of, open up space for. We didn't have particularly a plan as to how the sort of project would fill in this sort of space. So it was taking initiatives and sort of filling it in for us and with you. I guess what you've already touched upon with the sort of first points as well is that sort of security, insecurity is interconnected with so many different things and other people other than yourself, that you feel it individually. And it's also an emotional reaction, which then, to come back to sort of one of those motivation points with the project, is that once that gets into the policymakers' hands, you become a statistic. You become an object of the policy rather than the subject of how that policy is being thought about or that issue is being sort of thought through. And I think what you've described really, really well is sort of taking on that agency to some extent, devising the questions, thinking about the language. And I was thinking of a case in Medellin where the survey that we conducted there was done more or less at the same time as a government survey was being rolled out in the comunas, and the sort of equivalence to yourselves in the Medellin project sort of said, our survey is better, so we're not going to do the government survey, and just sort of like, because we're asking the right questions as we best understand our life and life experiences, and also where we want this data, this material to sort of go, rather than just sort of end up in some sort of bucket of indicators and tables, etc., which get lost in annexes of reports and so forth. So it's, the process is as important in some respect as the material that is produced and who it's for and who produces that material is as important as that as well. Yeah, really pleased.
Yes, maybe just to add on that is that there has been, because this issue of violence and crime is a very urgent matter in many cities, there has been this global conversation about we need to produce evidence-based policy, evidence programs, which means basically is that we have to get more data to understand the problems, right? But when we see how the data and that evidence is produced, what we are saying is that the experts on this matter, like if we're talking about violence affecting young people, who are the experts on those experiences with young people? And young people are not being involved, not just in the public conversation about security, but also about how we produce data that is relevant and really capture the complexity of security and violence. So I think that's one our learning from this process is first, we can produce better evidence and better data if we also open spaces, not just in the public conversation, but also in scientifically, in research, how we capture and question, what are we asking? Are we asking it in the right way, in a way that really captures those realities? So that has been, again, one lesson from us perspective, from academics, who study these issues of security and violence. So, yeah.
Thank you. And I'm sure you guys that are listening and tuned in have noticed, the strategy of not just the government, but institutions as well. We saw the deployment of the army, we saw there's more visibility of policing. But no one is asking, is that actually what the young people want? Is that what they need? Like in the survey, we saw that one of the top 3 challenges that young people are facing is unemployment, it's poverty, food security, and then gangsterism as well. And so it's important to ask what is important for young people. We're always talking about them and we're always talking about what they need, but they are not then involved in their processes. But I also want to ask the voices of the plane, what does the future look like for you? What is the prospect? What do you think the community needs, not just from a community perspective, but maybe what institutions can offer, what government can offer. From a young person's perspective, what do you think the future holds?
Like, I know we touched on this earlier, but like bringing more opportunities for the youth. And like a lot of the times people don't understand what that means. So for me, I think like bringing opportunities, like, for example, like implementing programs that can actually help you get employed. Because I know a lot of the times, like this, the school dropout rate is like increasing, and not a lot of people's doing well, and they don't see their security for the future. So, like maybe implementing like a workshops like within the community to be like, okay, since you're not going into school and you need employment, so instead of resorting to gangsterism, here's a program that we feel will help you and guarantee you a job once you are of age. Because I know a lot of the times that like youth can't stay in school because they need to like provide for their families. So by bringing those type of opportunities within the community will actually encourage the youth to be more involved, and also like letting like the older generation understand the youth perspective in like why the unemployment rate is so high. Like I still remember like last week on the radio station that the government actually said that in order to like, cure like unemployment, that the youth should be more encouraged to do self-employment, become entrepreneurs, and they have the grants and the funds for those, but the can only like cover certain things as well. So instead of like bringing that solution in, saying that okay, we can't provide you any other opportunity, you need to make the opportunity yourself. So I feel that bringing more opportunity in, asking the youth specifically about what type of opportunities do you want to see within the community would make a significant difference.
Yes, definitely I can agree on that.
What's your daddy?
Huge for the future, or what I see is that is young people leading. I feel like young people are equipped. It's just that we don't get the proper mentoring. I feel like, especially from, okay, not elders but adults, I feel like they don't understand youth obviously and the youth's perspective. So they don't necessarily guide us properly when mentor us according to what we are and who we are and what we stand for. So with that, I think we could benefit from better opportunities, especially within our communities, and as well as proper mentoring. Yeah.
I think for me, what I would like to see in the future is more community initiatives like ours, and also worthy opportunities. I know in one of our podcasts we touched on not only the government giving us opportunities, but also us as young people engaging and taking part in those opportunities that we are given. So yeah, like I feel our responsibility as the youth is to also reach out and also go find these things that's taking place in the community. Like I didn't know about this before, Ashton reached out to me and said, "Hi, do you want to join us? Doing this." So I think also we could reach out to people, schools, maybe they could be part of our podcast and things like that. So that's it. So, yeah.
Just wanted to just to share that we have a big sense of responsibility because this project and this process has been so rich, and so many interesting insights have come up. So for the futures, where from our perspective, one task is bringing all this work, all the insights to other spaces like policy conversations, to talk to some of the people who are in charge of developing projects or thinking about strategies for the communities. Our responsibility as well is to be able to share this knowledge that has been co-produced with you guys in a way that helps them understand how we need to make changes to the type of programs that are being designed, to be able to capture, all those factors that like have been highlighted. For example, we think about programs for young people, then if young people are affected, emotionally in terms of safety, when they walk and the type of access to programs they have, we need to think of programs that take into account all those factors, right? So not just one aspect of their lives, but not just employment, but also other types of support. So from our perspective is how do we bring that, we call that like transfer of knowledge. So how that knowledge kind of inform other spaces. So it goes beyond the spaces of Mitchell's Plain, it goes to other cities as well and other spaces.
Yeah, I was just going to say that one thing I do, I can't speak for Mitchell's Plain, and I mustn't at all. But one thing I do with university students in London is I ask, on my urban course, I ask them, what would a city look like? What would a space in a city look like if it was designed by, produced by young people? Rather than young people inheriting that space from us elders and all the mistakes that we kind of make, but not only the aesthetics, right? The park, that it must look beautiful, etc. But what must the sort of space feel like? How you engage with that space? And I think what he talked about in terms of the sort of infrastructure of the space, it's not only about what we're learning about in academia, because of learning about these kind of experiences from you guys, is that it's not about building, a school, a community centre, a football pitch. That is useful in and of itself, but it's all the kind of conversations that happen, all the connections that happen around those spaces. And so you have to open them out, not only to have the club, but to have the people watching the club, the netball game, the football game, the rugby game, whatever it might be, the music class, the skateboarding park, etc. So because that's where the change happens on the edges. The people see good things happening, they see and feel things happening, and they meet people there that they wouldn't feel that they could meet on the way to the tuck shop, or that they'd avoid on the walk to the tuck shop. So it becomes part of that sort of atmosphere of a place, and it's really small sort of changes that take place there. But the government has to come in, community leaders have to come in, school principals have to come in, etc., etc. But it has to come from the information and the motivation that young people provide.
Thank you very much. And just to add on, this is not the end of, all of this. So we do have other stakeholder engagements. We're actually painting a mural in Beacon Valley, done by some of the young people that live in Beacon Valley. And it's about legacy, so they'll be able to walk past and say, I did this for my community. The podcast, they will inherit the podcast. So it will be a continuation. So once the project ends, it doesn't mean all of these initiatives will end as well. I would like to open the floor for everyone online. If you would like to pop a question in the chat for the young people, you can do that. And then I'll open the floor to some comments if you want to add any comments before we sort of wrap up. You don't have any questions in the chat room? I also want to say, if you would like to follow our Instagram page, it's called Voices of the Plain. You can also follow our YouTube, where you can be able to watch the podcast and follow our progress throughout this journey. And as well, in our stakeholder meetings, the young people are going to be there, they're going to present. So they're really taking ownership of this project and what we've done. So it really is about, co-creation. It's not just about us extracting sort of information or their time. It's really about building something in Mitchell's Plain. No questions? No. Okay, so then I will end off here. Thank you very much for everyone who joined us online. We really do appreciate your time. Thank you to our young people. Thank you to Alex and Gareth. And yeah, this won't be the end of us. Stay connected. Awesome. Thank you so much. Bye. Bye.